Okay, hi everyone. Thank you for hanging with us there while we figured out some tech issues. Welcome everyone to our first Genome Startup Day event of 2021. My name is Kayla Young and I am the, hi everyone. Thank you for hanging with us there while we figured out, still figuring out tech issues, but we're there now. My name is Kayla Young and I am the Chief Operating Officer at Phase Genomics. And again, welcome to our first event this year. So for those of you that are new to our events, Genome Startup Day is designed to be a community building catalyst for genomics starters, founders, startup founders, investors, service providers, media, and job seekers. Please stay connected with us via Twitter and our LinkedIn group, which I dropped into the chat on your right throughout the year, as that's your best place to hear about upcoming events. So quickly for some housekeeping, we will do question and answer at the end of each session. So please drop those questions into the chat on your right, and we'll get through as many as we can. I'd also like to note that if we don't get through all of them due to the short timing of this event, we will take some of those questions to the LinkedIn group and answer them there as well. So additionally, there will be giveaways through the event, which Ivan will be doing. In order to win said prizes, you must be present. So last but not least, a big thank you to our sponsors, Agilent, Illumina, PacBio, and CoMotion. Without their support, these events would not be possible. So with all that, I'd like to introduce Ivan Lyachko, CEO and co-founder of Phase Genomics, who will begin with our fireside chat. Over to you.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming to another installment of Genome Startup Day. As you can see from my outfit, we're about to do a fireside chat. We're very fortunate today. We have with us Dr. Mustafa Ranagi from Illumina, which is largely true. And Mustafa was, starting at 2008, he was the Chief Technology Officer and also Senior VP at Illumina. Before that, he was at the Stanford Genome Technology Center. He also founded a number of companies. He was one of the early pioneers of pyrosequencing technology. And he's founded a number of startups, including Pyrosequencing AB, Parallel, Bioscience, NextBio, and Avantome. Just a couple of days ago, he announced his retirement from Illumina, but we're lucky to have him here to talk to us about startups and sort of his history in the space. Mustafa, thank you so much for coming to.
Thank you.
So, you've been a sort of a champion of entrepreneurship for a while. You've been with Illumina for a long time. That's kind of the sort of the top line item on the biographies, but you've actually done so much in the entrepreneurship sphere. What sort of drives your interest in supporting biotech commercialization and startups in general?
Thanks, Ivan, for having me, and thanks, Kayla, for organizing the event. So yes, biotech has been, of course, a passion, but the passion comes from the impact that you're making on human life. So when I was in high school, I decided to be in the field of medicine. I wanted to become a doctor, physician. And after, going to different, practices and clinics, with my uncle, so I decided, doctor is not my thing, but, I love medicine and I want to be an entrepreneur in this field. So when I moved from Iran, to Sweden for my education, I knew exactly, okay, genetic is the area that I want to focus on. And I did my PhD in genetic engineering and developing, and I ended up developing pyrosequencing technology, which was the first next generation sequencing technology. And the word of sequencing biosynthesis actually was coined, when in my first publication which was describing the pyrosequencing technology. And there are a lot of technologies that they have been offshoot of that. But when I look back, hey, that's the technology, of course, but that technology was fundamental in enabling a lot of applications. And we knew that some of those applications are going to be developed by other people, which was absolutely fantastic, and we really wanted to see, how we can enable people to make that impact. If people that are enabled to make impact, so I feel that I have impacted people's life, and that was the biggest satisfaction and the drive, during the course of my life.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, one of the kind of the themes behind this event, one of the reasons why we started it was really to kind of introduce kind of academics to the biotech life, and sort of the switching from the kind of the research community over to the maybe not switching, but people who are sort of on the cusp of transitioning maybe from academia to biotech, and a lot of folks are thinking about it these days, and so we're sort of at that interface, and so I kind of want, I like to hear perspectives of folks who sort of have made the switch. So what would you say is like your favorite thing about working with startups, especially early stage startups, because you're you're involved in the biotech, in the incubator, the Illumina accelerator. So what do you like the most about like these?
The agility and the fact that you can make fast decisions, and honestly, as startups, they are a source of inspiration for me. And when I look at entrepreneurs that they are in the mission of changing people's life, I mean that's huge source of energy, and you see that they are actually doing that. Any technology or any applications that they have been leveraging, sequencing or genomic technologies, most of them they have come into the clinical space, of course, and they are changing. Whether it's in the form of discovery or diagnostics. So I feel that the whole revolution has started. We are not even in day one of that revolution, and so it's amazing to see on the side, and sometimes be in the action and to watch that evolution and revolution that's happening.
Yeah, well, we've certainly seen that. I mean, this year, I think, or at least 2020 and 2021 have shown sort of highlighted how important biotech is for humanity. I get to sit in a lot of these events, and we spend so much money on things that are like the military, etc., and all these other things. But when a big pandemic or something comes through, it's the biotech groups are the ones who start kind of showing their value. What do you think, sort of on the counter side of this? What do you think is maybe the biggest challenge that early stage founders, especially academic founders, have in the genomic space? What have you seen that's the most difficult to transition?
So when I look at academia, so I have been in academia and at Stanford. So Stanford probably is a bit different than other academia. So it's not taboo, to start a company. You get actually a lot of credit to start a company, and but the biggest hurdle is I see that people, they think that it's all about the idea, and I would say that probably idea is important, but when I look at how I weight startup, and having been involved in research in academia and going to start a company and scaling, and then commercializing in the global level, so there are multiple touch points that are critical. One, of course, critical step is how to transition from academia to the company. So at that time, you really need to think that who are the right people that I really need to have in the bus. You're going from point A to point B. And the people are absolutely critical component of how you can make things happen. And they should have enough of incentive to basically take on that mission or to join you in the bus, from going from point A to point B. So when you look at a company, when at the time you start, so it's all about team. Of course, the idea that you have is on PowerPoint or, in paper. So it's all about the team. So you should do the evaluation based on the team. And as you make progress, you get to the Series A level. So, of course, at that time, people, they look at the team, but they look at what you have achieved, which in a way defines how good team you have had. And so you really need to have a concept, for a biotech or genomic company. And at the time you reach Series B, so you really need to have some sort of revenue validation. So your product should be in the market, and it should have some sort of validation, well, which in a way shows how good team you have had. So it's all about team. So and in order to get the right team, you really need to be generous and have the right people driving the right function. So startup is not about title. So basically, everybody is doing whatever they can. So I announce myself usually at startup. I'm the CJO. I'm Chief Janitorial Officer. And if you want to give me a title, but nobody has title doesn't have any value. I mean, you are basically a CEO of a one-man company or two-man, three-man company. So that doesn't mean anything. So you are there to do something. And I usually advise startup not to give any title, honestly. You have one person like CEO, but other than that, so you have head of technology, head of product, or head of revenue, and so on. As you grow and you have significant ownership in the company, you really need to bring value to your shareholder. Which means that you need to bring value to your share, which means that you are making progress on your product and or the roadmap of the company. So if that's the case, and if you see that a person, by hiring a person to increase that value, you should do it. Even they would take your job. And that's the struggle that I see people they have, at the company. And you have to realize, okay, this is your capacity, and I could bring experience at this point, or I could bring someone with a different expertise to take the torch and run as fast as you can to go to point B.
Yeah, I can definitely definitely emphasize with the fact that as the company grows, having to relinquish and delegate a lot of responsibilities and things like that along the way is definitely one of the challenges, because you start out, like you said, doing everything yourself, and little by little you have to specialize and try to get the right people for the right jobs and things like that. What do you think, in your experience, what do you think is the most common sort of mistake in the space that startups make? Is it that they just give everybody C titles at first, and then
That's a red flag.
the weird
That's a
team
red
thing?
flag. When I see that a lot of C title, at the companies, easy to give title, but it's very difficult to take it back. And people, they are emotional, and you don't want to in that position. That's a red flag usually for me.
Is there something that you see that young, like sort of early stage startups neglect, that they really should focus more on? I mean, for me, for example, like just an example, like for me, clearly, like sort of marketing and sales in the early days was not something that I was paying enough attention to, as much as I should have been, because coming out of academia, it's not something you're familiar with. But are there other things like that you see that are sort of common patterns that young startups tend to sort of not do right?
Yeah. So usually the scientific founder, they think that they have done everything and this is it, and they should have majority of the ownership. And when you look at the cap table, so it's heavily on the scientific founder, and then other people, they are not going to have enough incentive, and those companies usually they don't go anywhere. So the way you want to think, in a startup is that, okay, there's a pie, but the size of the pie you define.
Yeah.
And if the pie is this small, and you have, the entire ownership of that pie is not that much, but if the pie is, huge, and even if you would have a slice of that, so that's a lot. So I really think that you should usually think about how you can make a difference, how you can bring a product to make that difference to the market. We have to look at what's going to happen. So number one factor for me when I start a company is how I can make this company successful, not on how much I'm going to make at this company. So especially for first-time entrepreneurs, so they should be super sensitive about this, because they should not optimize, for their financials. They should optimize, for how fast and how good product they can get into the market. Because, if you get it once, then you can always repeat that. That's a good thing with entrepreneurship. Everybody wants to work with you. Oh, you have some unique experience. You took actually one idea and you turned that to product. That's a unique experience. Everybody wants to work with you, and you are going to have access to amazing people, and work, on even larger, ideas. So I really think that at the end goes back on how you're going to position yourself in starting company and bringing the right people to the team and give them enough of incentive. Number one goal should be how fast I can go from point A to point B.
Do you think that that sort of roots itself in the idea that most, I guess, at least academic technical founders think that the idea is good, the technology is good, this thing is definitely going to work, and so you try to kind of maximize your outcome, and you don't realize that the greatest danger is not that your pie slice is going to be too small. The greatest danger is that your entire pie is going to be worth zero.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And when I look at a lot of ideas, revolutionary ideas, I usually call them the ideas that they have miracle to overcome. And usually you see that, okay, there are some miracles that they have overcome in academia, but to make that a product that would require, of course it doesn't require a miracle. So the type of brain power that you need to have to overcome the miracles are different for type of people that they focus on how to make a product, a concept to a product, feasible product, and how to make it a robust product. And those are all different brains, and all of them, they are valuable in a company. And you shouldn't think that, oh, okay, since I'm the guy who has overcome the miracle and have addressed the challenging issues, which is true, but they shouldn't think that they should have everything at the company. Of course,
Yeah.
other people, they are needed.
So yeah, so if I might summarize, focus very heavily on the team, because that's what's going to keep your company, determine if the company is successful or not. Spend less time fighting over early stage equity and focus on
Yes.
getting the best people and motivating them as much as you can. And not everybody needs to be the same technical mindset. You need to have a diverse set of brains trying to make your company successful.
That's correct. I usually even, at this stage when I start company with people at different, that they would have different value, I go equal ownership actually in those companies.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically the way I have done.
Yeah.
And if I'm interested more, having in ownership, so I put the money in. So
Right.
and get some preferred share. But I think you should see yourself on how you can bring value to the company, and work hard for the share that you have got. I mean, of course, some people, they feel that they have got less or they have got more, but the goal of a company is not to financially address some needs of people. The goal of the company is to get a product out, and you really need to have the right people.
Yes, I'm thinking about the company, if you're the founder, the company is not you. you work for the company, and the company is really an effort of all these people. That, for me
Exactly.
at least, that was another kind of thing I had to learn. What do you think in the greater scheme of things? So right now, obviously, there's all sorts of tumult going on. But innovation is going so fast these days, driven by what seems like millions of startups just all over the place. What do you think? What are you seeing today, sort of in the larger scale of things, that gets you the most excited? Like, what do you think is the most exciting change that biotech is bringing to the world these days?
I think, the sheer amount of data that, um, we have entered into a data-driven biology. It was based on your gut feel a couple of decades ago, but, probably even a decade ago. But now we are getting into, a data-driven biology. So, and AI is playing a huge factor in it. So, I think that's one of the most exciting area of AI. So if you would bring an AI person to biology, so they are not going to be that actually great. But if you would bring, a genomic guy with AI background, so they understand the complexity. And of course, they could have other AI people, but you really need to have a good understanding about the complexity of the biology. Still, your gut feel matters a lot, but we are actually using a lot of data to validate, what our gut feel is telling us.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So we're up in Seattle, which is, full of tech AI folks. So we definitely understand the power of that technology is well sort of demonstrated. So we have some questions from the audience, and I think, Kayla, are you going to do them, or should I do them? Okay. Um, I haven't been reading the questions along the way. Um, so, Mustafa, can you list, you mentioned AI, but beyond just AI itself, could you list maybe some of the most important kind of must-know skills that a bioinformatician should sort of know in order to effectively transition um, to biotech? A lot of the point this event is really to kind of address people who are in academia. Like, what's the best way to get into biotech? Like, what are the most important skills? What they work on?
So you're asking specifically about the bioinformatic people. So is that correct?
More or less, yeah.
Yes, the AI is amazing, but the of course there are a lot of analytical tools, and coding. Those are great to know. But one thing that I've been uh, super impressed with is from the people that they understand, the noise models. So you're basically, you know, um, you look at, to begin with, you have to produce good set of data. If you don't have a lot of junk, of course, you're going to produce junk. So if you have a noisy model, so it will be quite difficult to analyze the noisy, biology. So, um, but I've seen some people that they have very unique thinking on how they set up the noise model and how they treat noise, and they classify that. And those are the people that I saw. Wow, they are making a huge, huge impact. And that was exactly what I saw when we started Grail. Grail, is a super noisy data, and you are going to cancer screening, which would require, detection of allele frequency of 1 in 10 to 100,000. And so, and you have basically a tiny tumor, like, pea size and chickpea size. And, that one, is basically you are going to put that in the context of the whole, all the tissues in the body. So the DNA that's secreted, from that little small, tumor, you don't know from where in the body it is. And of course, it's circulating among all the other, free DNA in the blood. So how would you go about identifying that needle in the haystack? And that I saw that, people that they had good understanding about the noise model, they were the one that they made a huge impact. Otherwise, we were dealing with a lot of noisy data. It was very difficult to interpret. I think people that they have got good signal processing background, and they have got good understanding about biology and where the noise could potentially come from, those are the ones that they have an upper hand in the industry.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Here's another good one. How do you see data security, data sharing, data ownership issues panning out? Because again, now that there's this huge influx of data coming in, what happens, in terms of security? What happens in terms of privacy?
That's a very, very, of course, good question, and and very important question, because health data are. If you go to the dark web, I haven't been there, but my people, they tell that the health data in the dark web actually.
Right.
Full disclosure.
That's right.
The dark web actually, the one of the highest money you can get is for the health data, and definitely this security and privacy of the data are of critical issues. But from what I'm seeing and hearing, from the expert, is that they tell that actually there are good advanced technology that are coming into space that could address the issue. The vulnerability is mostly at the junction point, and where we have API. Of course, you could have a secure system, but as soon as you want to go from point A to point B, at the junction, so those are the places that you have vulnerability. And what I'm hearing is that the type of encryption, like homomorphic encryption and those kind of things, actually are becoming a reality. So and it is becoming. It was not a reality a year or 2 years ago, but now I see that actually people they have started using those things, and they could address some of the security issue. But absolutely, it's critical to think about it. If you are a data company, you really need to make sure that you have full privacy and full security of the data.
Great. Well, thank you so much. That's all the time we have for this segment. Thank you for participating. It's been really great to hear your insight. And
you're welcome.
And I hope you have a lot of cool startup stories to tell in the future as well. Maybe we'll hear about them. Maybe in the future you'll come back.
Hopefully.
Cool. All right. Thank you so much. And so for the rest of you guys, one of the way to thank you for coming is we're going to give out a pair of these amazing DNA socks. And the winner will be drawn randomly by Kayla, and she'll tell me who it is. And then you get one of these. Is it nobody? The winner is Lauren Swanson. Congratulations. Okay. So for our next panel, we're going to have 3 awesome startups. And the moderator of the next panel will be Ed Winnick. Ed is the editor-in-chief at Genome Web and its affiliates, 360DX and Precision Oncology News. He's been with Genome Web for 16 years. And before that, he was the executive editor of Reuters Health Industry Briefing. He's been covering biotech and diagnostics industries for nearly 30 years. I know that anytime we have any news, we try our best to get Genome Web to write about them. So sometimes they do. Thanks, Ed. Ed, thank you so much for joining us. I will pull out and I'll come back at the end to give away some more prizes. But I hope you have a great discussion with our startup founders.
Okay, thanks very much, Ivan. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hello, everyone. As I've noted, I'm Ed Winnick. I'm editor-in-chief at GenomeWeb. I'm really happy to be participating in this event today. We have a great panel of startup founders today from 3 companies. We've got Natalie Ma of Felix Biotechnology. We've got Joe Meller from Sequel. And we've got Alex Rosenberg from Split Biosciences, which, as of a day ago, is now called Parse Biosciences. And I'm sure Alex will tell us more about that in a moment. So what I'd like to do is start off by giving each of you a little bit of time here to tell us about yourself, your company, and why you chose the path of either being involved with an incubator, an accelerator, both, or neither. So let's start with Natalie, and then we'll go to Joe, and then Alex.
Great. Thanks, Ed. And thank you again to Kayla and Ivan for setting this up and inviting us. This is a fantastic event, hopefully very informative for all of you. I am co-founder and head of business development at Felix Biotechnology, where we develop phage technologies to essentially overcome the key limitations of phage therapy and produce commercially viable phage products. And so a lot of what we were interested in is solving 2 problems. One of them is, evolution of resistance to interrupt microbes. And then the second one is host range of phage, because that's a key challenge. They tend to be exquisite, essentially microbiome scaffolds. You want to edit a strain, a species, or even a strain within that species out of a genome, or change the microbiome in some way. They're perfect. That means you also need to get host phage matching right. So what we do is we develop generalized therapies. So we're essentially creating phages that are engineered from tuned host range, and then we leverage the way the phages work against the host to actually turn evolution to our advantage by targeting phages to specific mechanisms of, say, virulence, antibiotic resistance, whatever trait you want to edit out of the genome. And that then allows you to take advantage of evolution instead of trying to fight it. So the resulting microbe, and anything that becomes resistant to phage, ends up then being susceptible to antibiotics, or less virulent, less dangerous to the patient, or lacking some trait that you just want to get rid of. So quick background on myself and who I am and how I got involved with this super awesome work is I PhD synthetic biology or molecular biology, depending on who you're talking to and how much trouble I'm trying to cause. And after that, went into management consulting in a healthcare space, helping companies commercialize therapies, and then jumped to essentially helping launch startups out of my same program I went to for PhD at Yale, where I helped roughly 8 faculty, 3 ventures got off the ground by the end of my year there, to the tune of about 3 million combined. And Felix by far was the coolest venture that I had worked with. And our strategy was to go through an accelerator program. We were part of Illumina Accelerator. For us, sort of at a high level, because I'm sure we'll get into more questions around this, Ed, is the value to us was having a really well outfitted space, and then the sequencing that Illumina provided, because again, we're heavily data driven startup. Really, we need to understand phage and host interactions and use that as the seed data for our machine learning platform to understand what are the key genetic determinants of host range. So the services and support that Illumina provided were invaluable for us to get our first data set and understanding how these phages work.
Great. Joe, why don't you go next?
Thanks, Ed. So I'm Joe Miller. I'm the founder, CEO at Sequel. So our company focuses on creating, sophisticated library prep tools to sort of help power sequencers and collect more information. Our technologies are really focused on how to improve the scalability of multiplexed genomic assays, focus on a variety of areas, single cell sequencing, high throughput sequencing of other things, recently doing some really cool work to help accelerate some of the incredibly important COVID sequencing effort that's now scaling up around the US and the world. When I started the company, myself and my co-founder, Jack Leonard, I would say, the availability of incubator space was crucial. The sort of, thinking of a company, especially at its early stage, as a sort of a young person, having a place to live is very, very basic on the hierarchy of needs. The benefits from it were not just, being in a space where we had the ability to really, kind of test early product concepts and work, really do some of the work that was required. But also, it put you in a space where there were other companies at that same stage of life, and that turns out to have all sorts of, I think, healthy psychological benefits. You, as a founder, I think we don't spend enough time probably as founders, ruminating on the stress that it causes. But it is very stressful, and having other people around you who are going through the same thing is incredibly helpful. And really, it acts as a way of calibrating your own experiences with other companies, and you realize, hey, what we're going through is very similar to what any company in nearly any space at our stage of growth would be going through. I think back on the comments that Mustafa made a few minutes ago about the importance of team. Again, I firmly believe, a company is really its team, and I feel incredibly fortunate to have brought in some incredible team members over the past few years as we've grown. And to me, that is what building the company is all about. The talent and getting everybody kind of rowing in the same direction is really what the building the company entails. And the products are in some ways a consequence of doing things the right way, and really, I think that has for us been, I think, the learning experience. It's you have to be willing to take those risks and make a few mistakes along the way. And I think, but certainly, I would definitely recommend any company getting started to take advantage of any incubator opportunity that they can. And again, I think, seeing your company as part of an ecosystem with other companies, again, incubators are a special place where, multiple boats can rise at the same time.
Okay, thanks, Joe. And Alex, how about you?
Sure, thanks, Ed. So I'm Alex Rosenberg, the co-founder and CEO of Parse Biosciences. And as Ed was just mentioning before, we actually recently, yesterday, just announced our Series A and rebrand from Split Biosciences to Parse Biosciences. And so the company, what we're doing is we're offering a scalable single-cell sequencing solution where the key thing is you don't need an instrument to use this technology. So it's an all-inclusive kit that allows anyone to get started with single-cell sequencing and really scale up their experiments. And, just in terms of my background, how I got into this was something I co-developed with my co-founder while I was a postdoc at the University of Washington. And so at the time, I think we were very focused on just technology, on developing. And as we're kind of going along, single cell sequencing was getting a lot bigger. We actually had a lot of people reaching out to us, how do we get this working in our lab? And for us, it was really important to actually get this out to people. And I think a lot of times what you see is academic methods, they kind of die in academia. And, to actually get it out to a lot of people and allow them to use it, takes a lot of effort, and that's not something that academia is, well suited for. And so for us, we started the company. This is early 2018. It was about the same time we ended up publishing the work. And since then, we've really been pushing the company, growing. We're 16 people at the company now. When, I guess, with respect to incubators, we were actually really lucky. So we spun out of the University of Washington, and they actually have a lot of support for companies and sort of very entrepreneurial spirit in general at the university. And so one of the nice things is they actually have lab space for spin out companies. And so it's kind of like a pseudo incubator that has a lot of the resources you would expect at other incubators. But, as Natalie and Joe have mentioned, getting lab space when you're small is critical. And just being able to operate in the beginning there is super important. also through the incubator, as Joe was mentioning, you're able to interact with other companies. A lot of people, I think, emphasize, it's really important to talk to a lot of people when you're getting started, especially when you're coming out of academia, that there's just a lot you don't know that you're going to have to learn. And some of that's going to be from customers, that you're going to have to keep talking to customers. I think in some ways, given that I worked in kind of the same field that my customers are, I had a pretty good sense of the customers, but you still want to talk to them. But, a lot of the sort of business aspects that you're trying to pick up, those are the things that you want to have good people around you, good advisors, also talking to other companies, learning about what are other companies doing. Maybe there's better ways that you could be modeling things based on those other companies.
Great. Thanks a lot, Alex. Natalie, I'm going to pivot back to you here. I'm curious to know, can you talk a little bit about the process of joining the accelerator and explain to the attendees who might be a little less familiar with how they work, what a typical arrangement looks like, and tell us, in the world that we're in now, pandemic, people not being able to go into offices and lab spaces, would it be worth it to do without the access to the physical space?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ed. So in terms of the accelerator program process, it's typically an application that you fill out, and there are generally preset terms. And that's typically a percentage of equity stake in the company in exchange for the lab space and additionally, in our case, like services through Illumina Accelerator. So you go through the application process, and this sort of speaks to, I think, one of the things that's really nice about the accelerator programs is they're often not just a lab space, but also I think a mark of validation in some way, right? Because like someone has vetted you, and so that can open doors. And so that for us was helpful as well. So that's how we got into the Illumina Accelerator. In terms of like the second part of the question, speaking to that value proposition, I think it's incredibly valuable. One, because of that mark of, again, validation. It's like, hey, we're an Illumina Accelerator company. Like Mustafa and Amadikash looked at our program and thought, hey, they're doing something super cool. We should support them. And we think that there's a path forward. So I think there is still a lot of value there. And I know in the case of, lab space, at least here in South SF, the lab folks are considered essential employees. So access to that lab space still exists. It is, at least again, in our area, going to continue to exist unless something really existential happens. The office space, I think there is value to it, but at least what we found is many of the connections that were valuable were put through, came through digitally anyway. And so the other thing that was great was that, Mustafa and Amanda could help us understand who should we talk to leverage our platforms and build out additional partnerships in addition to getting data on our lead asset. So both of those things I think are still really valuable for the sort of accelerator route. Despite sort of the changes that the pandemic has brought.
Okay, thanks. And Joe, your experience was slightly different. You did an incubator. So yeah. How did that differ from the experience Natalie just explained?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So there was certainly a phase, of trying to apply, to get the space in that incubator. So it's certainly. There's a process that, requires a certain level of having things really well articulated and lined up in order to be able to do that. And I think, that was certainly helpful. For me, I think joining the incubator, again, was we were there for less than a year. And, I think, part of the reason why is because, we, one of the benefits of being there, we quickly sort of outgrew, which was, the amount of space that we needed. And, I think, so, I think we certainly, had a great experience there and the support structure that was there to, kind of, even in the case of, the lab space that we moved into after we left the incubator was, owned by a firm that was closely tied to the, to the same organization. The network effects that kind of are created by tapping into a resource like this are, you don't really see them ahead of time, but so I, again, it's really, but it's an investment, really in kind of the future of the company, to put yourself in a situation where those effects are allowed to really, work in your favor. So again, I think I almost can't imagine, starting a company without that sort of resource in place. I think, that especially a company that's not, starting with, a huge, sort of check up front, so that I think that's, it was clear in our experience.
Okay, thank you. And Alex, you actually didn't go through an accelerator or incubator, but you did get help from UW. Just wondering what was different about your experience compared to that explained by Joe and Natalie.
Sure. I mean, I think ultimately you got to get to the same place, that you have to build your network. You have to understand, how have other people before you done this, and especially coming at it, coming at it from the academic side, where, technically you might be good, but there's still so much you have to learn. And, as Mustafa was talking about earlier, the technical side, like the idea is, just one aspect of it. There's all sorts of execution and different aspects that you're going to have to learn from other people and bring people on to the company. And so, I think for us, we were really lucky that the University of Washington, they helped us, start to build that network. And they have, different people who have started companies, angel investors who've started companies in the past and been successful and sort of want to give back and help younger entrepreneurs. And so that was, I would say, a good way to start building our network. Obviously, from there, I think what you have to do is really branch out. And, every person you get introduced to, you have to make sure you're asking them if there's other people they can introduce you to. And it's kind of just this spiraling effect that if you really put effort into it, you're going to meet a ton of people. And, that aspect's critical. So I think there's different ways to go at it. And, it sounds like a lot of these accelerator programs are actually a great way to do it in a very condensed time frame. I think in a lot of ways, we were lucky we had the support at the University of Washington.
Yeah, great. And that's a great lead into the next question, which is about mentors. Usually if you belong to one of these programs, you have access to mentors. And I'm curious about your experiences with that. And can you talk about where you found mentorship or coaching or community to support you as you've gone through the startup process? Natalie, why don't you go first?
Yeah. And I just wanted to follow up on the last thing. I think there is, the pathways in general will very much depend on your venture or your startup, right? So there's not a right answer here. It's very much what is the key next step you need to figure out, and like what tools will help you get there. So on the mentor side, like we, again, had great access to mentors, folks that were connected to the Illumina Accelerator, people who were interested both, in VC as well as in the regulatory side, which was incredibly helpful for us, again, because we're a therapeutics-oriented company. Like our lead asset is now in a phase 1/2 clinical trial. So all of that was incredibly helpful to help us know, okay, what's the key next step we need to do, and what is needed to get things off the ground. In general, there are sort of three buckets of folks I'd say you encounter in the sort of startup space. There are folks looking who are for consulting services and want to see you transition on as a client. They'll provide some initial upfront help. There are folks who are looking for their next gig, so they would want to join you generally in a C-suite position, and they're looking across multiple things. They might provide some help to you, but their idea is to get that next role. And then there are folks who have been through the process, and really, I would say they sort of help out of a memory of having been there, and someone helped them, so they're paying it forward and helping you solve problems that they would want to have had help with if they were starting out. And so those three groups of people sort of can serve different roles and have different specialty, but understanding where the person's coming from helps you frame the right questions.
Hey, Joe?
Yeah, I definitely agree with the value of that last category that Natalie just outlined. We had the benefit of, again, a network of in some cases, serial entrepreneurs who had worked in companies, perhaps some in life science, but some not. I think when you're especially when you're a first-time founder, the number of sort of unknown unknowns is extremely high, and you have to really collect as much of that type of advice as possible from people who have been there and done it. They've been through that. They were at some point a first-time founder or CEO themselves, but I quickly realized the goal was not necessarily to know everything, but certainly to know what I didn't know, and know where I might be able to go find it. And I think having people who have literally been there and done it, who can help you think through and be a sounding board, or just provide the pointers that are kind of critical in those early days, I think is extremely important.
Alex, you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Joe and Natalie hit it right on the head here. You really do, you need, I think, different types of mentors too. Like, you're going to have peer mentors who are maybe at a similar stage with their companies to you. You're going to have people who maybe they've done this multiple times, had several successful exits, or, high up at a big company. And you're going to get different advice, I think, from different people here. And so, I think it's always good to kind of average out over the advice you get over different people, because it's always going to be very specific to that person. And a lot of times people are sort of actually just rationalizing the decisions they made in the past. And it's kind of important to see like which of their pieces of advice actually apply to you. And it also, we're a bit different. Like for us, getting advice from someone who has started a therapeutics company, some of that advice I think is still going to be very applicable. Some of it's going to be different for us. And that's kind of where you have to take that advice, but also, as you're moving forward in practice, you got to think about how you should be applying it.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Alex. So, we've talked a lot about the benefits of joining these programs, but were there any unexpected drawbacks or challenges that you found with being involved with an incubator or an accelerator? Natalie?
Okay, I'll start off, but I think mine's gonna be pretty short. For IA, it is the nicest lab space you're going to have for a while, because it's part of Illumina, and so the lab space is phenomenal. I mean, we're now housed in J Labs at Oyster Point, so it's also incredibly nice lab space. But as we were looking around, landscape transitioning out of Illumina Accelerator, we're going from a place that had everything set up for us to more setting up on our own, which we knew was going to happen, but it always is in the moment like, oh, okay, like we're going to have to account for all of these things that we once, just relied on Illumina for.
Joe?
Yeah, no, I mean, if I was to kind of succinctly summarize what Natalie just said, you can get spoiled. And I think, again, the role of the incubator is to get you kind of on your feet and on a path. But I think it's incredibly important to realize that the goal when you're there is to leave. And again, some incubators have kind of more rigid timelines as to when that needs to occur. Sort of dates on the calendar that you like. We need to be, have some cash flow by this point in time. I think it's, if I was to sort of generalize from, what I have seen as a pitfall is that, yeah, if there isn't a kind of push to help companies leave the nest, I think they can linger sometimes. And again, it's comfortable. It's usually very affordable, if not subsidized lab space. And so, I think it's important to keep that in mind as a founder, that your goal in going to an incubator is both to join, but then, to also leave.
Okay, thanks. Alex, I don't know whether your situation, given your situation was differently, if the challenges were similar or different for you.
I mean, I would echo, I think in general, we were extremely lucky with our, incubator space and just the support we had from everyone running it. So really nothing negative to say there, Ed.
Okay, great. So, you all mentioned the importance of teams for a success of a startup. But do you think there is a specific combination of skills or personality that's necessary for your team to be successful? Joe, why don't you go first on this one?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel, I probably to really answer that question well, I would need to have more than N of one and number of companies. I can tell you, from what my experience was, those early employees have to really, those co-founders and early employees have to be able to do nearly anything. Again, it's wearing sometimes any hat any day. And I think so. There's a mindset that comes with that. That is, not gonna. It's not easily boiled down. But you hope that you learn to recognize that because those kinds of people are extremely helpful. So I think there's certainly a mix that is probably that some mixes that are better than others, but ultimately that kind of flexible mindset to me really supersedes and dominates that, I think.
Natalie, you have any further thoughts on that?
Yeah, I definitely agree with what Joe said. Spot on, and would only add that being very, very acutely aware of what your skills and strengths and your weaknesses are, and then getting along with the team, because that was one of the major reasons. When I had options to join various ventures, I chose Felix. Was by far the best team to work with in terms of compatibility, because you're as co-founders going to be spending a lot of time together. And you want it to be enjoyable as well as fulfilling and world changing, right?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Natalie. Alex, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, just to echo some of those things. I think in general, you have to have a mix of diverse people on your team with different skill sets. I think one of the things, it's extremely cliche, but I think when you're running the company, you realize it, is that teamwork is just incredibly important. And there's very few things that are being done in isolation. It's very different coming from academia, where you have one project maybe you're working on with one or two other people, where there's nothing like that. Very few things are like that in a company. Everything you have to communicate with other people. And so I think we've been extremely lucky to have people who are really excited to work together and all motivated towards the same goal. And that's something I'm sure everyone has heard as advice, but I think when you live it, it's really important.
Okay, thanks a lot, Alex. I'm being told
Oh, hello there. Have you come back for more sweet presents? You're so selfish. Thank you, everyone, for coming. This has been a great event. Really enjoyed listening to everyone's feedback. For those of you who have come here for the first time, please follow us on Genome Startup Day on Twitter. We also have a LinkedIn group. If you go to the website, you can join up to kind of keep the conversation going. If you have questions, feel free to email us. So for the drawing of the presents, so the person who will get one of these fancy socks and even this local Seattle coffee, you can tell it's local because it's got a picture of the Space Needle on it. And that person is Omar Cornejo. Omar Cornejo, would you please type anything non-explicit into the chat box so that we know you're there? Omar, are you present? Ooh, Omar, your absence is making you lose this sweet, sweet prize. All right, let's go to our next random drawer. How about we give this one to Yasmin Homayun? Yasmin, are you in the audience? Oh no, everyone is gone. All right. Let's do, let's see. Let's do a third. Manuel Olario. Manuel, would you like a present? Are you present in the audience? Oh, someone's volunteering. You guys are all here. But so many people are here. Well, good. I'm glad y'all have senses of humor. It's a shame no one's going to get this coffee because the next present is chocolate. Look at all this awesome chocolate, everybody. And I can't give it out until somebody takes this coffee off me. How about Eduardo Pareja? I think Kayla is just making up names that don't exist just so I can just so we can torture you people. All right, Eduardo, you're not? No? All right. Eduardo is here. Eduardo, yes, you get coffee. All right, you get coffee and socks. We'll email you. All right, next. The sweet, sweet chocolate. 5 delicious chocolate bars of different flavors from Seattle's Theo's Chocolate. Who is it? Ooh. I have a Susan Collins. Susan Collins taking her taking some time off from work in Congress is joined us. So Susan, are you here? Who wants the chocolate? I'm gonna eat it all myself. I love the feeding frenzy in the audience. All right. The next winner is, the chocolate winner is Sanjay Mishra. I know you're here because you were commenting. You wanted coffee, but you get chocolate instead, so haha. All right, you guys. So once again, thanks to everyone. Our next event is going to be in July, so look out for the additional information. Follow us, Twitter, LinkedIn. Again, I wanted to say a huge thanks to our sponsors. Our gold sponsor is Agilent. We also have sponsorship from Illumina, PacBio, and Comotion. Comotion is the University of Washington tech transfer space, the department and incubator. It's our birthplace. Also, Alex came from there. So thank you guys for supporting us. And to everyone in the audience, thank you for coming and have a great rest of your day.